You might have seen, heard of, or read about scam artists. Maybe even encountered one yourself. But trust us on this, you have never met anyone like this guy we're gonna tell you about in this video today. Despite being terrible at the sport, this dude scammed his way to a professional contract with the Champions League club. Of course, we all know how difficult it is to make it as a professional footballer. It takes years of practice, dedication, consistency, and in a lot of cases, luck and divine grace. But this guy bypassed all those things and nearly made it to the top. But how the heck was he able to do it? Well, come along as we tell you this mind-blowing story of how a fake footballer fooled big clubs into offering him huge contracts. Let's start from the beginning. First, the name of this footballer is Grégoire Ackelrod. Grégoire was born in Paris, and like many young boys, all he wanted to do was play football. But he didn't just want to play football as a hobby, he wanted to go pro, and he was going to make sure he achieved that by hook or by crook. But while he had the passion, the dream, and the hunger to make it as a professional footballer, the biggest hindrance for him happened to be a lack of football talent, which you could say is the most important ingredient required to become a professional footballer. You see, Grégoire was a smart kid, he was just bad at football. So bad that at age 10, his dad watched him play for the first time and banned him from playing football because he was so embarrassed by how bad his son was. His dad said to him, "Greg, I am so upset. You are so bad. I don't want to see you anymore on a football pitch." You know how bad you must be for your father to say that to you after watching you play. Now, if that sounds crazy to you, imagine how Greg himself must have taken it. Being on the pitch playing football with his friends was always the highlight of Greg's week, so that statement from his dad was like a dagger to his heart. But it wasn't even like his dad hated him. Like we said earlier, Greg was a smart kid, so his dad just wanted him to focus on education. But nah, Greg insisted that he wanted to continue doing what he loved. Because of his insistence, his well-to-do parents cut him off. He stopped getting an allowance or any sort of financial help from them. And when we say his parents were well-to-do, we're not mincing words. Greg's grandmother was married to French Oscar-winning actor Maurice Chevalier, and she'd inherited his fortunes after his death. So there was money in the family, a lot of it. But having been cut off by his parents because of his love for football, Greg was now entitled to none of that fortune. But while many would have just said to hell with football and gone back to being taken care of by his parents and doing whatever made them happy, Greg remained resolute. Everything that happened only served as motivation for him. He was going to prove his father wrong, and he was going to succeed despite his parents and family. He was going to play football at the top level. Did he achieve this dream? Well, sort of, and we'll tell you how he did it in a second. But first, if you're enjoying this video so far, slap the like button and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, back to Grégoire Ackelrod. Without any support from his parents, he started working at McDonald's to make ends meet, while living in a studio apartment in Paris, and plotting how to break into the footballing world. Not long after, he did break into the world of football. He started out playing in the PSG reserves, but even he admitted that that was nothing to be proud of. He was in the PSG amateur squad, which played in the bottommost tier of French football. Greg himself said that nobody watched that league and nobody was ever gonna find out about him there. He called it a league for kick-and-run players. But the Frenchman had a plan to play the hand he was dealt and still hit the jackpot. He came up with an idea to manipulate the truth to his advantage. Here's where it gets super devious and super interesting, guys. Grégoire created a fake website, and on it, he declared himself a professional player in the PSG reserves. He had pictures of him donning the PSG jersey, so it sort of substantiated his lie and made it much easier to believe. He would take articles and match reports from L'Equipe and post them on his website, only changing the names of the star players. For example, when L'Equipe would write about Nicolas Anelka's performance after a game, Greg would take the article and post it on his own website, changing Anelka's name to his own. So, after he'd gotten enough content on his website over the years, he decided to start applying. But he had one more trick to pull before sending his CV out. You won't believe what he did. He snuck into the PSG home ground one day and took photos with his jersey on, and then boom, he sent his falsified CV along with links to his fake website to some of the biggest clubs in England. Why not France, you ask? Well, he probably figured it would be easy to find him out in his home country, so he decided to go foreign. Chelsea, Arsenal and Manchester City are some of the clubs that received applications from Grégoire. Of course, they all rejected him, but he got a breakthrough when 4th-tier English club Swindon Town decided to give him a shot. He was called for a trial, but it ended up being an absolute embarrassment. Greg himself told the story of how the goalkeeper played a long ball out, and while he was trying to go in for a header, the ball ended up hitting him right across the face, and everybody burst out laughing. Of course, he was not invited for the second round of trials, but Greg, in his usually persistent and never giving up character, showed up anyway. That singular act impressed the manager, and he gave him another opportunity to redeem himself, but his disastrous performance was just irredeemable. He had the required attitude, but he just didn't have the talent, so he didn't get a contract from the club. This is another point where many would have given up, but not Greg. Never Greg. He didn't stop trying. And because he just never stopped showing up, Greg's football skills improved slightly. In 2007, he trained with Bournemouth. And guess what? He scored for them in a pre-season friendly game. That was like a miracle. After that display, Swindon Town FC came back for him, and this time he did not disappoint. He scored 2 goals in a friendly game with some other trialists. Was the fraud getting good? At this point, the Swindon supporters had already taken a liking to him, but the club's first-team coach Paul Sturrock was still not convinced. The fans pleaded for Greg to be given a chance with the first team, but Paul didn't budge. Anyway, luckily for him, his brilliant display for Swindon Town was caught on camera by Sky Sports, and that earned him a call from Norwich City to play in a friendly game with the reserves. But he relapsed. Greg, who looked like he was getting better by the day, went back to being horrible. He performed badly in the Norwich game and was rejected by the club. As it turned out, the fraud wasn't getting good. It was only a purple patch. But did that stop him? No, he kept going. At this point, he felt he was close, so he was not gonna give up. No way. Oh, and Greg was not the only one getting rejected. He was doing some rejecting himself. He received proposals from professional clubs in inferior leagues in European countries like Luxembourg, but he rejected them. They were too small for him. He had his sights set on much bigger things. And bigger things did come in 2009, in the form of CSKA Sofia of the Bulgarian League. They just qualified for the UEFA Champions League that year, and it was the perfect opportunity Greg had been hoping for. After a 2-day trial, the coach was convinced Greg would fit into his plans, so he was ready to sign him. They were offering him £15,000 a month. Of course, he put pen to paper quickly. This is what he'd been waiting for all his life. He didn't think twice. I mean, it was never about the money for him anyway. It was just a dream he wanted to actualize so badly. And now that the opportunity had presented itself, he made sure to grab it with both hands. He signed the contract, took official photos in the club's jersey, and was published on the club's website as the new signing. It had finally happened for Grégoire Ackelrod. It was an uphill climb, but he'd signed a contract with an actual football club and was finally going to prove his dad wrong by playing professional football. Or so he thought. After he was published on CSKA Sofia's website, the fans, excited about a new addition to the squad, wanted to know the caliber of players they were getting. So, one of the fans contacted a PSG supporters group and asked them what type of player Grégoire Ackelrod was, seeing as he once played for PSG, according to his CV. Now that was when it all came crashing down. None of the PSG fans had ever heard of him, so that raised suspicion. They did more research and found out that he lied. So the supporters group went to the club with their findings. The club then investigated him and found out he was indeed a fraud. Bear in mind that the year was 2009. The technology and social media weren't what they are right now, so doing a thorough background check wasn't so easy, especially for a club outside the big leagues. Surely, a thing like this will never happen in the modern day, with the many verification systems and procedures, as well as the complex scouting technology available at all levels. Anyway, when Sofia found out he was not what he claimed to be, his contract was immediately annulled, and he was sent back to France immediately. But guess what? That was still not the end of the story for Greg. He kept trying, only that this time around, he had to go back to those inferior leagues he once rejected. He went for trials in Greece, Kuwait, and Canada. He just wanted to play football anywhere at this point. And it finally happened. For real this time. He got a contract with Mississauga Eagles, a Canadian football club that was founded in 2010. He played there for a year, after which he moved to Andorra to play for Athletic America. Guess you could say that Grégoire Ackelrod finally fulfilled his dream. They say get it done by hook or by crook. Greg did it by crook. Now he's in his 40s and works as a football agent, helping aspiring footballers get a career in professional football using more legitimate means than he did. He's also an author. He wrote a book titled Pro at All Costs, detailing his very unique experiences in the world of football. He also wrote about his grandmother's relationship with the late actor Maurice Chevalier in Love or Death. Greg admits that he has some regrets about how he went about trying to achieve his goal of playing professional football, but he's at peace in his conscience knowing he never actually swindled anybody or any club. He might have fooled them, but he never took a penny from any of the clubs. His flight, feeding, and accommodation all through the many trials were completely paid for by himself. The most he did was waste their time. So, would you say that's forgivable then? What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Also, we want to know what your verdict on Grégoire Ackelrod is. Low-life fraud or an absolute genius without footballing talent? Now, you just heard all about an extremely hard-working and determined player without footballing talent. Would you also like to know about an extremely talented player who was just lazy? Click on this link and we'll tell you how the laziest footballer became a generational talent.